Episode 4 of the N.B.A. podcast. I was about to say the old name, but new times.
Nope, we don't say that.
Nope. And we will be getting into more people that we would rather not mention, but we're going to. But as is tradition with these off-season shows we've been doing, we have some breaking news to start us off. I don't know if you saw this a couple hours ago. Dennis Schroder signing with the Lakers on a minimum.
Wow, I actually did not see that, so Thanks for bringing that up to my attention. I mean, it's certainly interesting because of, the performance, which personally I didn't think he was that bad of a player for them that one season. But the issue is that they had high expectations for him, expectations that I felt were unrealistic. And so I'm hoping for his sake that the expectations be a little bit lower for him. And, maybe he can flourish. I'm not sure what his role will be, with Kendrick Nunn's already there. Westbrook obviously still on the roster. I'm not sure.
Well, does this mean that Westbrook, maybe they feel like they have a deal soon? Because it feels like Dennis Schroder is perfect as like a minimum guy to replace the good parts of what Westbrook was giving them last year, like another ball handler off the bench.
I mean, arguably, when you look at it, there could be an argument being said that Schroder performed at just as a similar level to Westbrook the previous year than Westbrook did last year. And, he's getting paid much less. Now, it depends on what you're actually looking for because, Schroder is not going to be the guy to necessarily handle a scoring load, which I think was some of the frustration for the Laker fans, especially because they needed somebody to, take some of the scoring load off of LeBron James and AD. And he couldn't do that. But at the same time, I think he gives you much better defense. I think he's obviously a better shooter than Westbrook, although he's not the best. But, he is a better shooter than Westbrook. And he gives you more
comparison,
energy.
Westbrook shot 30% from three last year, while Schroder, when he was with the Lakers, 33%. So it's not like the biggest difference.
Yeah. I mean, it's kind of I don't want to say pick your poison necessarily because it's not like I do think both of them are still solid NBA players. It's just a matter of it gives them options. I think it's a good signing.
It's a good signing
for the minimum. I mean, I wish the Suns would have pursued him for that kind of money.
Absolutely.
Because as a backup point guard, there's nothing wrong with Dennis Schroder. I mean, former Sixth Man of the Year. It makes a lot of sense personally. It's just interesting. They're going into a season now. They have Nunn and Schroder and Westbrook, but I mean they have depth. You can't argue with that. It's just a matter of how that trio works and how the minutes are distributed.
I don't know why. I just wasn't surprised at all. I'm just like, that just looks like the most natural thing I've seen all day. But you mentioned you wanted the Suns to pursue him, and there'll be plenty of Suns today. We're going to dive right into the Sarver thing. So I'll set the stage here. We all know the story came out last year, really when the season was starting, right? And luckily y'all prevailed through it. But pretty troubling stuff when you read into everything, all the allegations, racial and sexual. And by the way, just cut me off whenever you want here. But we're starting to see pressure from other owners. I'm sure you probably saw that Baxter Holmes tweet about John Najafi. I think that's how you say his name. The second largest minority owner, and he's calling for Sarver to get out. PayPal, they said that they would take their patch off y'all's jersey if he didn't get fired because he only got the 1-year suspension. So I haven't even talked to you really much about this. Like, what's been your thoughts? How much have you looked into it? How much are you over it?
So, I mean, this has been something that's been in the news for a long time. Like we mentioned, it was really at the start of last year when the news kind of broke that there was going to be an investigation into Sarver and some of the stuff going on. I think the report definitely met what I expected, based off of the initial story talking about those kind of things. It was definitely a very large evidence drop, basically, that I think is pretty damning when it comes to Sarver. I mean, it's one of those things, like the most obvious comparison is the Donald Sterling situation not that long ago. I just think at this point, I think the NBA, I thought they should have been harsher and it's not just me saying this because Sarver is a terrible owner, but I think they should have been harsher anyways, because obviously Donald Sterling, the reason that happened is because he was caught on camera and tape saying it. But I mean, you have multiple different, people coming out saying the same thing. I think that's pretty much concrete as it gets. And I was surprised the NBA only did a 1-year suspension. With that being said, I think it wasn't a surprise for me when I saw, talk about the minority owner of the Suns and then PayPal. And it won't just be them. There's going to be tons of sponsors who are going to pull all these endorsements. And it's going to come to a point where it'll make more sense for Sarver to just sell the team and, get his money. Well, he's going to make more than his money that he initially paid for it in the early 2000s that he paid for the Phoenix Suns. But just for him and his sake, I think it just makes too much sense for him to just sell the team and get out, which I think, we can talk more basketball about this later, but that would be an incredibly good thing for the Phoenix Suns. I think it doesn't matter who buys the team. But in my personal opinion, he should be forced to sell the team.
Yeah, because whether 100% of the allegations were true or not, you still hear just so many bad things about him. I mean, actions speak louder than words. Look at all the detriments he's brought to y'all's team. But I just found it interesting. So a big story that came out the other day by the very same Baxter Holmes. James Jones, the GM, obviously, and Jason Rowley, the president and CEO, were like the only ones in the article to deny the claims. Like, definitely not a conflict of interest there. But I mean, you hear stories like, there's the goat story, how he put the goats in Ryan McDonough's office, and then you've probably heard the one from Raja Bell, right?
I don't think I have. No.
So basically how it went down was Raja Bell was playing really good, and he was having dinner with Robert Sarver, and he said, hey, I think I deserve a contract extension with a raise because other teams would give it to me. And Robert Sarver replied, I know you're worth it, but I'm not going to give it to you because I don't have to. And you look in the story, and it does feel like he treats people in that way. Like he likes the fact that he's an owner and he could toy around with people. I want to bring up a couple quotes here from that very same story. I would recommend anyone read it. But basically what was happening, earlier in the story, it said, quote, some said the longtime owner fostered an environment in which employees felt they were his property, even once asking one woman whether he owned her to determine whether she worked for the Suns. And then there was another one. He was getting in a dispute with Earl Watson because he wanted Earl Watson to leave Clutch. And Earl Watson basically said something about how you wouldn't want to fire a black coach or get a black coach to leave his black agent. Sarver replied, quote, yeah, I understand what race you two are. Sarver replied, according to Watson. So I'm asking you, how bad do you want your job? So he just seems like a piece of crap, man. And, we just renamed the podcast because of another piece of crap, but it just sucks like how these pieces of crap are just the ones getting rich, and look at what happens when you let them just, they just do whatever they want. They're rich. Who cares, right?
Yeah, it's one of those things as well where I look at it and, people make fun of certain owners because they're too passionate, or like Steve Ballmer, he gets made fun of, and he's interesting, certainly with some of his characteristics and stuff, but he actually does seem like a genuinely decent person. There are owners that can be decent people for sure, but the thing is I think everybody knew with the Sarver stuff. The thing he's most well known for is obviously how cheap he was in the mid 2000s with that Steve Nash and Amari Stoudemire team, refusing to pay Joe Johnson, who would be an incredible third option on a playoff team, and letting him go, and it kind of became the demise of the Suns. Then we traded Sean Marion for O'Neal, et cetera, et cetera. So Suns fans already have a bad perception of him, but it became pretty well known. especially when they stopped winning, because I think the Steve Nash era really helped kind of hide a lot of things because we were playing winning basketball and you kind of forget. But from that period, from about 2012 when Nash left to really the bubble, everybody in basketball kind of knew the Suns were not a good organization. They were not well run. And that's why a big factor in us becoming good was not only the players we acquired, but, the culture. He kind of let Monty Williams and James Jones run the show, which, to be fair, I credit him with doing that, because I think he knows the reputation of the organization was not in the best space, and that's why he let people like Monty and James Jones, who are very well respected throughout the league, to kind of take that front. So I think he's very aware of his unpopularness, but I mean, at this point, I don't still think there's no going back at this point. And, like I said, I would be pretty surprised whether the league removes him or not. But I think he will not be the owner of the Suns much longer. I think he'll either be forced by the league to sell the team, or he will just have to sell the team because all of his sponsors pull deals, etc. Players may refuse to play for him. I saw Chris Paul put out a tweet saying he was horrified and disappointed by what he read. Conduct, especially towards women, is unacceptable, must never be repeated. And he also said, I'm of the view that sanctions fell short in truly addressing what we can agree was atrocious behavior. So, I mean, when you have one of your franchise players saying that, it's not a good look. I shouldn't say it's not a good look. It's obviously not going to be a good situation if he's still the owner come the start of the season.
I just think about how good y'all's future will be without him as the owner. I mean, it could be hit or miss with a new owner, because you look at the Timberwolves and, we kind of like what they did with that big Rudy Gobert trade. But some people are like, nah, that's just new owner wanting to get new toys and invest a lot. So
yeah,
if nothing else, you'll at least maybe get in a more interesting new direction once Chris Paul starts to phase out and you see what you have with Devin Booker and DeAndre Ayton. So I'm really hoping for your sake that it does happen.
Well, at the end of the day, the last really word I have on this is, you talk about, for example, people talk about like the Rockets owner, for example, Tillman Fertitta, I believe is his name. I'm not sure how to pronounce that last name.
I think
but most people agree. Most people agree he's a pretty terrible owner. But at the end of the day, we can get another cheap owner, that's fine. But as long as the owner isn't a piece of crap human being, I think we will all consider that an improvement. So, we can speculate more on owners at another time, but I think it's best for basketball and for everybody that he is removed or has to sell the team.
Yeah, well, keep your mind on the Suns, because I have some Suns surprises for you as the podcast goes along. I didn't realize until later in my planning. I'm like, oh, Patrick will be delighted this episode. But we're going to play a couple games because we had to go through that kind of subject material. So games are always fun. The first one is going to be versus mode. And we're actually just going to do the West edition today. I didn't even tell you that before. We're going to do the East one some other time because I realized all the teams I picked were West. I'm like, okay, well, we could do East at some point. But anyway, so here are the rules. I'm the one, well, I guess before I get into that, the point of it is we'll go through 3 rounds. In each round, I'm giving you 2 teams. And basically the aim is you need to give me your level of confidence of if they're going to reach that category. So the first round is going to be, are you more confident they'll reach the finals? Second round, more confident they'll reach the playoffs. Third round, play in. So I'll start. Are you ready, Patrick? Is that good with you? Because you're the participant here.
Yep, I'm ready.
All right. So, oh man. Round 1, the finals. Which team are you most confident? Before you answer, I'm going to set the stage here, and then I'm going to give you a chess pass. So first round, Suns versus Nuggets. Suns. They were the first seed last year, 64-18. Their season ended in the second round in 7 games after a major collapse to the Mavericks. Your notable I did have notable acquisitions, but really it's just reacquisitions. Dario Saric from injury and DeAndre Ayton from that wild fiasco. Y'all went to sign him. The story this year is what links will this team recover from that meltdown, especially that DeAndre Ayton relationship to Monty, CP3, and Booker, and will Chris Paul's age finally catch up? And that's the Suns. On the other side, we have the Nuggets, 6th seed last year, 48-34. Their season ended to the Warriors in 5 games due to the talent void left by the injuries on their roster, sorry, and the lack of perimeter defense. Their notable acquisitions are KCP and Bruce Brown. Then they replaced Campazzo with Ish Smith. Jamal Murray and MPJ are coming back from injury. And their story is, how well can Jamal Murray and MPJ bounce back? Will they bounce back in a big enough way to give them a shot to the finals? And will KCP and Bruce Brown be enough perimeter defense on the wing? And Patrick, will Mike Malone pull the plug on DeAndre Jordan before it's too late? I throw you, sir, my chess pass. Go ahead.
Well, that's definitely it's a difficult one. I think all of these are going to end up being difficult, particularly I think in the West, there are a lot of loaded teams. Unfortunately, well, I'm not going to say unfortunately because I'm just going to get accused of bias, but I'm going to have to go with the Suns here in a very tight decision. My main thinking is, I think track record, the Suns have had 2 very successful seasons the past 2 years. I look at the past 2 years, I think Jokic is playing incredibly unbelievable basketball. Some of the best seasons, we'll ever see out of a player in the NBA. I mean, 2 MVPs obviously speak for themselves. I worry about him and, his usage rate. I do worry about that. He's pretty much shown to be kind of an Iron Man. He doesn't get hurt very often, but I do worry about that. And then there are also the questions around Jamal Murray coming back from injury. I think, and I hope specifically, I really hope that he'll be able to come back and be fully healthy. But, there's no guarantees when coming back from a long-term injury. And then when it comes to Michael Porter Jr., I just don't have much faith in his ability to stay healthy at this point. It's not just necessarily the injuries he had last year, but the injuries he's had throughout his entire basketball career, even in high school and college. I just don't have much faith in him being there as a third option for them. Now, I will say, the supporting cast, I think, has improved a lot. We're both big fans of Aaron Gordon, I think. Bones Highland obviously had a very good rookie season, and we're both big fans of Bruce Brown. I think that was an excellent addition.
Oh my gosh,
we've talked about. I mean, it's just an incredible add to any team.
The fact that you have Bruce Brown and KCP as your wings as opposed to last year, what you had, it's a huge upgrade, man. It really is, especially
Absolutely.
with how well they fit with Jokic. But I mean, I definitely see what you mean.
Yeah,
because even when y'all played them, to be fair, Murray was out, and of course Porter is Porter with the back and his defense. But I mean, y'all swept them.
Yeah, it's not even necessarily at this point because when we make the playoffs this year, hopefully, obviously, when we make the playoffs this year, it'll be 2 years removed from that. Chris Paul will be 2 years older.
Yeah.
But with that being said, I think the more important thing, I think Devin Booker is 2 years older. I think 2 years ago there was, arguments. He's a star, he's an all-star, but he's not an all-NBA player. I think he's made that step now to where he's an all-NBA contributor. Obviously, in terms of just value, Jokic is a more valuable player, obviously. But Booker is at that level where he can almost counter some of Jokic's ability. And then I think the rest of the team, I think Chris Paul.
Ayton could counter Jokic's ability. We've seen it before.
Well,
I mean,
it is.
And this versus, it's not necessarily matching these 2 teams up together, but I mean, we're just saying if they face each other in the playoffs.
Yes, if they face each other, yes, that's definitely a good point on the Jokic-Ayton thing. Ayton, I think Jokic has publicly said that Ayton defends him the best out of any player in the NBA, which is obviously a big mark of respect for Ayton. I think a big part of this as well is I think Ayton is going to have a big step forward this year, and I think it's because the Suns giving him that contract. Obviously, we know about the whole situation surrounding Ayton and the Suns and all that. I think there were promises made to him that he's going to actually get to have the chance as like the number 2 option this year. You know, Chris Paul is going to more fall back into a third option. That is what I hope and what I also believe is going to happen. And because of that, I think the Suns, they may struggle more in the regular season, but I think when it comes playoff time, you know, Booker and Ayton as the 1-2, and then CP3 and Bridges and Cam Johnson as scoring options, I just think they're going to be a little bit more prepared for the playoffs and than they were last year. And I also think they'll be a little bit slightly better than the Nuggets. That being said,
y'all's
I don't know
wings are like overall are probably better, you know, and that's probably what like a big important, like one of probably the most important thing in the playoffs now at this point.
Yeah. That being said, I think the Nuggets are a very, very good team, and this is like a kind of like a 60-40, 55-45 kind of decision. You know, it's just my gut instinct tells me that the Suns have a better chance of making the finals when you're talking about the NBA finals.
Yeah, and that's what this round was all about. Yeah, see, I really like that one right there because just I don't know, it does give a good gauge. It's cool to see that the Suns are still in this conversation, that the Nuggets, that they have been in this conversation, and now that it seems like with some of the pieces they added, and hopefully with injury luck, that they will be come playoff time. So you picked Suns there round 1. Now we're moving to round 2. Which team are you more confident will make the playoffs? So the 2 teams, Patrick. You have the Lakers versus the Pelicans. The Lakers, they were 11th seed last year, 33-49. Their season ended before the play-in even started. Their notable reacquisition is Kendrick Nunn from injury. Then they got Patrick Beverly, Lonnie Walker. They got a few decent minimum players. Big story with them. Will the Russ situation end well? Oh, yeah, and then I guess I should mention that they just got Schroder. Will the Russ situation end well? Will he play better? Will they trade him? Will Anthony Davis be Anthony Davis again? Will LeBron continue his insane run at this age? So then on the other side, the Pelicans, they were the 8th seed last year, 36-46. Their season ended after a valiant 6-game effort against your Phoenix Suns. Biggest notable reacquisition of the offseason, Zion Williamson. And then they got Dyson Daniels in the draft. So their big story, can Zion maintain a healthy season for once? And if so, can he mesh with his teammates who also like to take a lot of shots? And if both of those things pan out, can this team go even higher than we think? Patrick, I give you my chest pass.
Wow. This is another difficult one. This is one where my heart says the Pelicans here, but I'm going to have to go with my brain, and I'm going to have to pick the Lakers here.
Interesting. Okay.
And I mean, this is not just me hating on the Lakers because it was hilarious last year what happened. I'm sorry. But I do think that they've made some good improvements this year. I don't think their defense is magically going to become top 5 in the league again like it was in like their bubble championship season. I just don't think they have the personnel for that in this moment. But I think culture is a big thing. I think Patrick Beverly is going to provide that. You know, you can hate on Patrick Beverly all you want. Believe me, I've done that quite a lot in the past couple of years. But one thing you can't deny is he brings a defensive culture into a team.
Absolutely.
You know, I think, you know, it's going to be a fresh start with a new coach. You know, I think he's going to be given time. And I'm not necessarily saying that Frank Vogel was not somewhat responsible for their demise last year, but the media and the players were kind of on him immediately. I mean, that's just my honest opinion on it. I don't think he was really given a fair chance last season, given the cards he was dealt. And because of that, it just became a toxic situation so early. I don't think even if they start off so, I don't think that'll be the case because they just hired a new coach and Ham. I don't think he's going to be chased out by the media quickly unless it's an all-time historic bad start, which I don't foresee. It's really a matter of health when it comes to this debate. I do think if AD and LeBron miss quite a lot of significant time like they have like last year, for example, I think the Pelicans without Zion are a better team. or with Zion, obviously. But that being said, I have a little bit more faith this year. Another year removed from the bubble, having a full season. I know LeBron is obviously older. AD is still young enough, but he is getting older. Westbrook is obviously getting older as well. I think that they will be a little bit more healthy this year. And I think that's what's going to push them over the line. I also do think that the new coach is also going to be able to get more out of Westbrook too. Not necessarily saying that Westbrook is going to become the Westbrook of old, but I think he will have a more efficient offensive system for him to thrive in. Not necessarily thrive, but be more efficient, obviously. And I think that'll make him a much more viable player for them, especially late in games, instead of like last year where you saw a lot of late game collapses because of Westbrook and his inability to shoot and stuff like that.
And defend.
Well, defending, I don't think is necessarily going to improve.
No,
with Westbrook.
No, it
but I think their roster is constructed better than last year, and I think without the injuries last year, there's probably a pretty good case they still could have made either the 7 or 8 seed of the play-in or the playoffs themselves.
No, yeah, it is a good point, because it obviously everyone's soured on the Lakers, but I don't know, man. I just look at their roster, and I would actually kind of like it if you could flip Russ into something useful. The one that's my favorite that I heard was like the giving up the 2 picks to get Buddy Hield, Miles Turner. I mean, if you could just replace him with them, then I actually do like all the supporting pieces. But I'm kind of at a point with AD. I'm just like, I need you to prove it at this point. The past few years have not been great since the bubble. The injuries keep piling up, knick-knack after knick-knack, and he can't shoot. He can't shoot. His defense, it's still been good, but it just has to get back to the level it used to be if they're going to make the playoffs over the Pelicans, to me. I would still have the Pelicans, personally. Maybe I'm biased because I just like their team a lot. But I mean, to be fair, I've gone up and down on them, but yeah, I mean, so you have Lakers here. You're the participant. I just wanted to give my take there. So last round here, play-in, Kings versus Blazers. Now we're doing a big breakdown on the Kings, so we don't want to step on them too much right now. But I just thought this was such a juicy topic or versus matchup here. So Kings, they were 12th seed, 30-52. Their season ended before the play-in tournament began. Their notable acquisitions are Kevin Huerter, Malik Monk, Keegan Murray. I like all those guys. Story. Will they be able to beat that 16-year drought with De'Aaron Fox, Domantas Sabonis, and Mike Brown leading the way? All right, we have the Blazers, who were 13th, 27-55. Their notable acquisitions, Jeremy Grant, and then Shaedon Sharpe, but I mean, he probably won't play much. Their storyline, can Damian Lillard come back to where he was before last year? Patrick, I give you my chess pass. Who do you have?
This is incredibly difficult. I look at the way the Blazers are constructed, and I just don't have the confidence. I think Jeremy Grant is a big piece for them. I think he's a player. He's the type of player they haven't had for a while. I mean, Robert Covington was solid for them, but he wasn't on the level of Jeremy Grant in terms of front court scoring. I don't think they've had front court scoring of that ability since LaMarcus Aldridge. I guess you could consider Carmelo Anthony, obviously, but he was more of a bench player, a complete front court player is what I really should say. I don't think they've had somebody like that since the days of LaMarcus Aldridge or even Nicholas Batum.
Yeah,
I think that's going to be a major. I think that's going to be a major help for them. But the issue I have is I look behind that and I see, Nasir Little, who is a fine player, but there are a lot of questions around his game. Josh Hart, who the question is, is he even big enough to really be a forward? He's more of a guard. And then after that, Justice Winslow, Greg Brown. I just don't see the depth at wing to be a viable contender.
It's so close. Like, even though they're undersized, GP2 and Josh Hart, like you said, I mean, they're more guards, but they could defend the wing. If they just had one more guy, man, one more.
Yeah. I just don't see enough depth there. And then I look at what the Kings have, for example. You know, obviously they're not the most loaded team at wing either. But, you know, Harrison Barnes is a very good player. I have high hopes for Keegan Murray. I think he's going to be a good contributor immediately. And then like Trey Lyles, for example, at the four is a viable enough player to have. Kevin Herter is much more of a three than the guys on the Blazers, I think. And then you have Davion Mitchell, who kind of fits the mold of Josh Hart or Gary Payton as that kind of undersized guard who can guard wings. I just think they're more of a viable NBA team. The questions I have are really coaching wise because, you know, initially when you asked the question, I was like, Mike Brown, you know, I'm going to be honest, I'm not the hugest fan of Mike Brown, which obviously we'll get more in depth when we do our deep dive into the Kings. Mm-hmm. But at the same time, I don't really have much faith in Chauncey Billups either as a coach. I don't think he's necessarily proven anything with the Blazers. I mean, last year obviously was a whole different scenario because of the injuries and then the trade of McCollum and stuff. It was obviously not the easiest first year for him. That being said, I don't have much faith in his ability as a coach yet. He was on the Ty Lue coaching tree, which does help his case here. But until I see it, I think I actually have more faith in Mike Brown than him, which is kind of
just from the experience. I mean, he was with LeBron for those years, and he was with Golden State, you know?
Yeah.
Yeah.
When you look.
Oh, sorry, go on.
Sorry, when you look at it, the things that obviously scare you when you're picking the Kings in this scenario, which is who I'm going to go with, is, you know, Damian Lillard obviously as a scorer is more gifted than anybody on the Kings. And you can make an argument that Simons is also up there. But at the same time, De'Aaron Fox has been a very consistent NBA player, you know, with his scoring and his passing and that kind of stuff. And then also Sabonis is a big thing here. You know, the Kings were actually a very competitive team down the stretch after acquiring Sabonis. I think he's going to give them enough. And when you surround him with wings like Keegan Murray, who can defend, Harrison Barnes, who can also defend at a decent level, and then obviously, you know, Davion Mitchell in the backcourt. Kevin Herter is not a bad defender either. I think they'll have enough defense to make up for Sabonis's shortcomings at that end. And then obviously Sabonis, what he gives you on the offensive end is also going to help. So I just have a little bit more faith in the Kings because of their roster construction, and that's why I'm picking them.
Yeah, a big thing that stuck out with what you were saying that compelled me was the fact that you have Herter, which was such a great pickup by them. And like you said, we'll get more into them in that big breakdown. But the fact that your starting lineup here, and Harrison Barnes and Keegan Murray in today's NBA, you would kind of like to be power forward. Not kind of a lot. You would like them to be power forward. But, I mean, if you have a starting lineup of De'Aaron Fox, Kevin Herter, Harrison Barnes, Keegan Murray, and Domantas Sabonis, that could kind of mask some of that defensive deficiency that Sabonis gives your team. Like, it feels like Keegan Murray, Barnes, and Herter as, like, your three defenders talking and moving together. I don't hate it. I feel like that and the veteran coach of Mike Brown could improve the defense. I think you compelled me, and see, that was part of the reason I wanted to do this, so you could kind of sway me one way or the other. But I'm with you. I'm feeling a lot more confident in Kings. But let me ask you, now that the Kings are the victor round 3, do you have the Lakers above them for play-in or playoffs, like in confidence level, same standard?
Yes, I do.
Okay, just the LeBron AD star power is too much, because I really like what they have around the edges a little more. But I'm with you. I still like the Lakers a little more. But
yeah, I think the Lakers are more in the contention for the edge of the playoffs / early play-in. I think the Kings are looking at a 9 or 10 seed finish just because of the strength of the other teams. I think the Kings. I don't think the Kings have a shot of making the playoffs. I think they have a good shot of making the play-in. I don't think they have a shot of making those top 6 seeds. I think the Lakers do have a chance of making the top 6 seeds.
Yeah, right. If all things break out. Yeah. Okay.
Yeah.
Gotcha. All right. Well, that was a good little game. You know, I got to work on my narration for the rounds, but that's what episode or part 2 of this will be. But we're not done yet. We have another game here. I don't know. We need to find a good name for it because I couldn't really low high high low. We're gonna be saying which team were lower on the consensus and which team were higher on the consensus. So yeah, that's right. I decided to start lower because we're gonna do it different than consensus, Patrick. And I want you to start. Go ahead and give me your. Who are you lower on?
So I'm probably going to be accused of quite a lot of salt here.
Mavericks.
Yep.
I knew this would be your team. I knew it. Make the case.
And, okay, so there's obviously going to be a lot of people probably saying, "Well, you're just a hater because of what happened in the playoffs," and I'm not going to lie, I still am a little salty about that. It's nothing against the Mavericks because, they deserved it, obviously, the way they played, especially in those last 3 games of that series. With that being said, I just don't see this team being as good as it was last year. I think let's start with the obvious things. Luka Doncic is a generational talent. He's going to have another incredible season, assuming health, obviously. Dorian Finney-Smith is one of the best wing players in the league. Reggie Bullock is a great 3-and-D player. They still have Dwight Powell. They added JaVale McGee, which will give them some size they didn't have last year. They still have Maxi Kleber as an option at the 5 to kind of spread the floor. If you want to go to that option, you can also play the 4. You have somebody like Spencer Dinwiddie, who's probably going to take a big step forward. You have Tim Hardaway Jr. back. With that being said, Jalen Brunson had a very good year last season, and I think he's just going to be missed quite a lot. And the main reason is I think, when the Mavericks made that trade to get Dinwiddie for Porzingis, I, at the time, actually disagreed with it. The only reason I said I disagreed with it mainly was because I thought Porzingis posed more of a matchup issue. I do think they lost a bit of that, the matchup flexibility they had with the ability of Porzingis and the size and that kind of stuff. But at the same time, they became much more of a more modern N.B.A. team with, 2 ball handlers, 2 wings, and then a guy in the middle who can, guard the perimeter, but can also, provide on the offensive end from the perimeter. I just don't see the depth that they had last year. And the main reason is it's just the ball handling. Outside of Luka Doncic and Spencer Dinwiddie, I just don't see the ball handling. Tim Hardaway Jr. is going to fill that role off the bench, I would assume, with Dinwiddie in the starting lineup. I just don't see Tim Hardaway Jr. being able to run the offense the way that Brunson did. And because of that, I just don't think they're going to be the same. I also think Brunson is a more inspired defender than Tim Hardaway Jr. or Dinwiddie. And I think that's not going to help their case
either. They should be ashamed because they're way taller than him.
Yeah, they should be, but Jalen Brunson plays his heart out. I think Dinwiddie is a downgrade from Brunson. I think Hardaway is a downgrade from Dinwiddie off the bench. And also, I think if there's an injury to Luka or Dinwiddie, you're in a situation where you only have one primary ball handler, unless you want to start playing Frank Ntilikina or somebody else on this roster. And because of that, I just have more faith. In other teams in the West to get above them, and that's why I have the Mavericks as more of like a 5, 6, maybe even a play-in team.
Yeah, I mean, like you said, if Luka gets injured, they're in big, big trouble. But like more so than a lot of teams when their star gets injured. Because what you were saying with the ball handler situation, I will say I love Jalen Brunson, I really do. But lately I've been, I guess, underrating like what he brings. Basically, what I'm saying is, like, I have Spencer Dinwiddie, and he's not as good as Jalen Brunson. But he's still giving me similar production. I could find a guard that could score for me anywhere in the league right now. Look, that Porzingis trade you mentioned, I'm the only one that liked that trade in the world, apparently. But you got Spencer Dinwiddie for an offload contract, and look how much he helped you. Like, I think they could get someone like that in the middle of the season. And then I think you're underrating a bit how much Christian Wood could do off the dribble, especially playing with a roster that he's never had this diversity in skill sets before. Like, what Luka will be able to do to set him up, and how other people will be able to play off of him, getting to the rim and stuff like that. Uh, I think they could get close to generating the offense, but I mean, I'm with you. They lost Jalen Brunson. They might take a little bit of a step back, but we'll have to see. I don't know. I'm interested because I'm definitely see where you're coming from, but I guess I'm more. Am I just a Luka fanboy, Patrick? Is that what it is?
No, I don't necessarily think so. When I looked at it, I was like, I'm having these question marks. I look at it, I don't have the same question marks about the Warriors, obviously, the Grizzlies, the Suns, the Nuggets, the Clippers, if they stay healthy. Those are just some teams straight away that I don't have those question marks about. And that's why I think I think a lot of people have expectations, they'll be a 3 or a 4 seed, they'll have home court in the first round. I think they'll finish below that. They'll be on the road in the first round, or they may even be in the play-in tournament.
Yeah, I'm not sure yet. We'll have to see when we do our standings episode, like right before the season. But my team, for who I'm lower on the consensus. Why am I struggling with that word? Anyway, the Nets are my pick, and we already kind of talked about them a couple episodes ago when we figured out Kevin Durant was returning. And it's not like people are super high on them, but they're up there in the odds. They're like a little bit above y'all and on FanDuel's title odds. They're plus 700. I think I'm out, man. I'm a big Kevin Durant fan, but you don't have good bigs on the roster in a league that's dominated by some great bigs, especially in the East. Your big three, not only are they like nutcases, but they're also super injury prone, all three of them, the past few years. And I just don't trust it, man. There's a stink going on for me, and it could go haywire pretty quick to me. I could be completely wrong, and they just start the season, just start winning a bunch of games. But I just don't know if I like what they got going on in terms of defense. I mean, they got Royce O'Neal, okay, but they're just not great on the wing. So yeah, I'm lower. Like I think we even argued about, or not argued, but just talked about it. Like I have the Cavs above that. Did you have them above the Cavs in the standings? I forgot now.
It's tough. I think I would take the Cavs at this moment, just because I have more certainty in their health, like you mentioned. I think that was a very good point. Not even about the off the court stuff, but just because I have more faith in their younger players to stay healthy than Kevin Durant fought through some injuries last year. He's getting older. Kyrie Irving, off the court stuff aside, also has a history of picking up nagging injuries. I have more faith in also the Cavs supporting cast than the Nets supporting cast.
And it's not even close. And you mentioned the nagging injuries with Kyrie. Well, look when it is. It's always in the playoffs when you need to win at the highest level. And I mean, this is covering regular season and playoffs, but I'm not confident either. I really wouldn't be surprised if there's 6 or lower in the East. Like East is going to be really competitive this year, man. Your Miami Heat, Cavs, Philly. I'm out. So all right, we've been negative Nancy's. Who are you high on this year compared to what you've been seeing?
So this is another one that probably won't surprise you because we've had the discussion quite a bit. I'm not necessarily high on this team, but I'm higher than what I think is going to be projected for them, and that's going to be the Miami Heat.
I got your answers to a T. I knew when I sent you this topic. These would be your
It was one of those things. If you listen to our podcast enough, you'll be able to kind of know.
Yeah,
I've been high on the Heat for a while, and I've kind of been low on the Mavericks. I just look at the roster they have, and this is a team that finished first in the East last year. Obviously, it was a very close
51 games.
First. Yeah, it wasn't necessarily the record that got them there. It was just the competitiveness of the East. That being said, they bring back pretty much their entire core. They don't have PJ Tucker anymore, but there were quite a lot of things going on at the end of last year, especially in the playoffs, where PJ Tucker was actually getting benched at the end of games. You had Kyle Lowry brought in as a veteran presence last year, and he didn't actually play that much because of injuries. Of course, he is old. There's a I mean, that may be a big reason why he's not playing as much. But I do have more faith in him actually being a little bit more durable this season and actually playing games. You know, you have a lot of players who were getting significant minutes for the first time in their career. Gabe Vincent, Max Strus. I think they will be able to take steps forward. Maybe Omar Yurtseven as well, who played really well in limited minutes last year. Caleb Martin, who just got an extension.
Good for him.
Oh, yes, very happy for him. And also, a big part of this is Victor Oladipo, you know, who only played limited minutes at the end of the year, came and played some in the playoffs. I have high hopes for him staying healthy. And if he does stay healthy, you know, I think that's a very significant piece, you know, a former all-star to add to the mix there. He could end up being the starting two guard very early in the season if he doesn't start the season as the starting two guard because of his ability to create offense for himself, and he's also a very talented defender as well. You know, he's a great two guard in the NBA both ways. And also, you have Jimmy Butler, obviously. The one part that does concern me is not necessarily the injuries for Jimmy Butler, but just, you know, he does rest a good bit in the regular season now because of how valuable he is in the playoffs, and also the fact he is their primary threat. But I have faith he'll be healthy. And then the other big piece, of course, Bam Adebayo is obviously the number 2 guy on this team. And I'm so high on Bam. I just love watching him on the defensive end. I think he's improving every year on the offensive end. I think he might take a step forward this year and shoulder some more of that offensive load. And then also Tyler Hero as well will also help with the offensive load. And
will he start this year?
That is a good question. You know, I was talking about Oladipo starting. Max Strus is probably the other option. But you could see a world where his defense may have improved enough to where he does start. It'll be interesting to see what they do, whether you see Jimmy Butler as the 4 on this team or who really is going to start the 4, because, you know, Bam's at the 5, Lowry's going to start at the 1 if he's obviously healthy.
My bet's Caleb Martin at 4.
That would make the most sense, I would imagine. He's a little bit undersized.
He plays above his height, though.
Oh, definitely. I mean, he's the same height as PJ Tucker. He just doesn't have the thickness of PJ Tucker, and also the history of PJ Tucker, you know, playing the 5 in Houston, played the 4 a lot in his career and stuff like that. But I do think that's the most likely scenario, or maybe like Haywood Highsmith, but he doesn't really have the track record in the NBA to actually start, I would say. So that's probably going to be the scenario. You could see a scenario per se where Butler's at the 4, Oladipo's at the 3, Hero's at the 2, and that. But I don't think that's necessarily going to be the case. If I had to guess, I'm going to say that they're going to keep him in his role as 6th man at least to start the year. And if he plays well enough, then there's a good chance he may end up getting moved into the starting lineup.
Well, you've kind of compelled me. Looking at the oh my god. Looking at the roster here, I mean, you mentioned Max Strus and Gabe Vincent. Any fantasy owner of a team will tell you on the waiver wire, Gabe Vincent, Max Strus just threw up huge numbers throughout the year. So that, because like my biggest concern was that offense we were talking about. Like, how is this team going to generate enough offense in the regular season? I still think it'll be a problem. Obviously, Tyler Hero and Jimmy Butler are your big engines for that. Bam is here and there. But the fact that you have Strus and Vincent to come off the bench to light it up, or maybe one of them starting, you still have that Duncan Robinson contract and some picks here and there. So even if you don't go for a star, maybe if y'all are playing really well, sorry, I'm not saying y'all to imply you. I'm just saying y'all. I was
wondering what you were ensuing there. But yeah, continue.
Don't worry. But even if you don't go get a star, maybe if they're playing really well come trade deadline, you trade Duncan Robinson and a pick for a really good veteran in that price range. And then it's kind of like what I was saying with the Lakers. Like, if I just swapped Westbrook with a couple good players, I'd be way higher on the roster. I feel like if you could turn that Robinson contract into something good, they're pretty complete all around, specifically a PJ Tucker replacement. Like, because, yeah, like you said, Victor Oladipo had a pretty good bounce back in the playoffs. He wasn't always there offensively, but you mentioned it. He's a defensive hound. You know, I love my boy Caleb. He's great on defense. Dwayne Dedmon's a competent backup center. Yeah, there's a lot to like on the Heat. You've convinced me for sure that they're a lock for like at least 5. So good job.
There's just there's a lot of teams in that range. It's another thing. You look at the standings. I think the Bucks are going to be better this year. I think the Celtics are most likely going to be better. We didn't even mention it early, but the news about Danilo Gallinari going to miss the whole year.
That sucks.
It's a bummer. Big bummer. We both love Don Corleone and his wonderful hair.
No Don Corleone this year?
Inside joke, but anyways, it'll be a miss for the Celtics, but I still think they'll be complete enough. I think they're a deeper team, especially on the wing. But everybody else, the Sixers, the Raptors, the Cavs, the Nets, there's question marks around it, and I just have a little bit more faith. Eric Spoelstra is a fantastic head coach. I think I have more faith in him than some of the other coaches in that range to push the Heat and their culture. I think their regular season culture specifically is going to help them.
Yeah, what's not a question mark? Jimmy Butler. He's 3 exclamation marks, dude.
Yeah.
Yeah, no, because I like some of the other top teams, their roster a bit better, but Jimmy's a dog, man. Give me Jimmy. That's why I'm still not all the way down on the Heat, because I like a lot of their players, but I'm a Hornets fan. Dang it. I'm wearing my shirt right now. So for my team, can you guess what it is? I'll give you 2 guesses. What do you think my team that I'm higher on is?
Oh, that's going to be tough. I know I'm tempted to pick one of the lottery teams, specifically the Magic. That's one of the teams I'm thinking about. The other one, I'm going to go, I know you've mentioned them quite a bit, the Sixers.
Both wrong. I mean, Sixers, I am pretty high on. Magic, I'm pretty high on, but not for any real wins. I picked your Phoenix Suns as my higher on team, because I don't necessarily, because y'all are still in the top 6 for finals odds and all that, but you don't really see y'all in the discourse a lot, and maybe it's because y'all don't have any new fancy toys and because all this stuff going on with Sarver. And like I said, I told you you'd be delighted. A lot of Suns talk this podcast, but I just look at it. We talked about it earlier. I mean, the roster's intact. Y'all won almost 70 games with it. I mean, they're still going to be kicking for a high seed. And like you said, competing for the finals. I don't think people could sleep on your Suns this year, especially with what you were saying earlier about DeAndre Ayton. Can he get a bit of a bigger role on offense and show out even more, which both of us think he will. So yeah. The
competitiveness of the West is one of those things that's tough to really predict, what team. But I do think the Suns, the track record in the regular season, 2 seed the season before, last season the 1 seed, I think they're a good bet. They're still the same team. Obviously, there's the whole thing big on stale. Obviously, a tough ending to last season when that goes wrong. But I still think they'll have, especially with the whole Sarver debate, if that situation goes well and we have a new owner and stuff, the optimism I think will help that. And I do think people are talking down on them. It's one of those things where, and I'm not saying that the Suns are necessarily a better team than the Mavericks. I do think they are, but I think people are putting them more in that range of 4, 5, 6 seed. I think they're most likely to be a top 3 seed, with the Warriors, with the Grizzlies. I think those 3 teams are still the deepest.
We'll be duking it out for that top 3 spot throughout the year. Yeah.
I think they're the deepest teams, and I think they have a better shot of getting those top 3 seeds, maybe even top 4 if you want to throw in another team, whether that be the Clippers if they stay healthy, or you could say the Mavericks, of course, the Timberwolves, teams like that, the Nuggets. But I think those 3 teams, specifically in the regular season, I think are going to just have a little bit too much depth. And that's why I think people are more predicting them to finish lower than that. I would still have the Suns much higher in the top 3 in the West.
Completely agree. I mean, I'm a closet Suns fan, so I just keep supporting you, buddy. Well, all right. That was a lot of fun. Played some games, talked about Dennis Schroder, Robert Sarver. What a way to spend a Friday night. I count that as a success.
Yeah.
Any closing thoughts here?
No, I mean, not really. I really like the game part though. That was a lot of fun to do. So definitely something we can integrate into future episodes.
Yeah, and I'll say it before we close out just one more time. So you had Suns over Nuggets to make the finals, Lakers over Pelicans to make the playoffs, and Kings over Blazers to make the play-in. So and then Lakers over Kings. So. But yeah, all right. Thanks, Patrick. It was a lot of fun, and
Of course.
goodbye, people.